Continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. Mark Twain. DC Tribe, Josh Thomas, glad to have you. Be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple and or Spotify. This podcast is brought to you by Unbreakable Teams. We use a science-backed process to triple your company's productivity without additional costs so you can buy back your time. To learn more about how we can help you dominate the next 12 months, head over to unbreakableteams.com. Once again, that's unbreakableteams.com. Today's guest is Alejandro Szita. He is a California and Florida mortgage broker for artists, business owners, and self-employed professionals. He shares the challenges that these borrowers face and how they can be overcome. Alejandro, welcome to the Do Zone. Say what's up to the tribe and tell us something you believe is the key to getting stuff done that most people wouldn't think of.
Hi, Josh. Thanks so much for having me in your podcast. I would say that as a business owner, you're always like swamped with to-do things, and many of them are urgent. I would say just pick the ones that only you can do and try to find someone that you can trust to do the other ones. That sounds simple. I know any business book says that. And I know that to do it is hard, but if you just work on doing that, then you will succeed quicker. Still, it's going to take you time. I mean, this is not a walk in the park. Still might take you years, but like you said on your website, it's going to be improvement after improvement after improvement. You're going to feel it. You're going to feel and see that you're going in the right direction.
That's right. And, you mentioned that any business book will tell you that, any entrepreneur, mentor, or coach will tell you that, but we still need to hear it. And sometimes we just need to hear it said in a different way from a different angle or at just the right time. And that's one thing that I've learned, Alejandro. I wanted to get your opinion on this. It seems to me that when I'm ready to learn a lesson, I'll receive it.
Yes.
When I'm not ready to learn that lesson, I'll reject it. Thoughts on that?
I completely agree with you. When you're not ready, the lesson, the actual deal or the opportunity is in front of you. It's laying there bare naked for you to take it. Pardon the pun, but you don't. You don't even see it. Now, I come from a background of university, of studying, of books. I love to read. I'm good at studying. I'm good at writing. I'm good at all that. But just doing, like you said, on your podcast, on your other guests, just doing the action, going out there, talking to people, trying to do what you read, trying to do what the coach is telling you. It's a whole different story, and you learn by doing. And like Robert Kiyosaki, in one of his books, says something that I read it and I go, wow, this is amazing. He said that Rich Dad told him that he needed to fail faster. Needed to fail faster because then he was going to know and he was going to build his skill set quicker. And he's completely right. I can tell you that most of the good things that I can do today are learned because I failed at them many, many times.
You mentioned something important here about failing faster. I think there's a fine line where we need to understand, okay, when am I failing? So when do I walk away? If I'm going to fail, when do I decide that I fail? And that's something that I think a lot of people miss. It's failing fast is about, I want to get that feedback so that I can learn the lesson and get it better. But it doesn't necessarily mean, well, I failed, I give up. But sometimes it does. And so it's kind of like this gooey area. And so taking that lesson to heart, fail faster. Can you tell us, for those of us who are looking for something a little more concrete, when do we consider a failure and what do we do with that failure?
I will refer to your bio. You said that you initially in your career became a real estate agent and that it was really heartbreaking for you. And you realized that this was not an easy job. So I would like to start there because that was my situation too. I came from marketing. I came into the financial picture, and I had to get a real estate license in order to do loans. This was back in 2005, 2006. And real estate really is a profession that you have to do many things right just to be able to close one deal that may be able to pay some bills. I'm not talking about becoming rich or wealthy or millionaire. I'm just talking just surviving. Just to survive in real estate, you need to be really good at communication, at writing, at reading, and interpreting people, and knowing when to press and when not to press, calculating a value, researching potential legal problems on title, and I could go on and on and on and on. So you can fail miserably in any one of those and never really sell one house or help one buyer buy one home. So this is what I would call the ultimate failure for me. I'm on the phone. I'm talking to this prospect. The prospect has already agreed. In this case, I'm going to talk about a loan, but I can tell you that doing a loan is very similar in terms of challenges as to selling a house or buying a house for a client. So I'm doing this loan. The buyer has already agreed. The buyer, the borrower, by the way, he's a high net worth individual. So technically speaking, he doesn't really need the loan. He needs it, but not really to pay bills. He needs it to forward his business plan. So I'm with him on the phone. This is a loan in the millions. This is many years ago. And he is upset about something that is $18.56. So he's trying to force me that I will take that as a pay cut. And don't get me wrong. Of course, 1856, I would have taken it as a pay cut, but this was more than that. This was like the fifth or sixth time that he brought about an item like this. And this is what happens. Every time you say yes, the client controls you. There is a point where you have to control the client. This is a transaction that I needed to pay my rent, by the way. So this was not just a light thing. He didn't need it. I needed it. He had me on a corner. He went on and on and on. And I simply did not budge. And then I hung up the phone. And then I thought, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. I'm not going to get the loan. But so what? I'll figure something out. But it felt really bad. Now on the podcast, it sounds cool. But at the time when I was experiencing it, it was really shitty. Okay?
I
so
understand.
He was so sure he had me on the spot, which he did. And he was so sure that I did not have any other option but to grant him the $18 or whatever it was that he signed. I didn't know that. The next morning, I get a call from the escrow agent and he said, okay, your borrower signed. What do you want to do now? I thought, wow, that's amazing.
Fund the loan.
So the loan closes. He calls me up on the phone and he says, where is my $20? And I said, what are you talking about? Yeah, the ones that you agreed to. I said, I never agreed to. But what I'm trying to say is that it comes to a point where you are going to fail. And I believe that if you own it, if you accept it, if you go to the worst case scenario, okay, this is the worst case scenario, I can face it. I don't know how I'm going to solve it, but you know what? I'm ready. Bring it on. That's when you start to turn the tide around. And that is going to happen more than once. In my career, it happened many, 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 many times that you get to that point. But after you face that point over and over and over and over and over, it comes to a point where you know what? You don't care anymore. You know it's coming. You see it. You say, okay, no problem. I can do this and this and this. I'm going to handle it that and that way. You're not afraid of it anymore. And when you come to that, your clients sense it. And now that's when you become to do well. Yeah. So the answer to the question is don't avoid it, confront it. Even if it's super painful, the more times you vanquish it, the surest you are on your way to success.
Yeah, well said. And I imagine that anybody listening right now can think of multiple examples where they were back against the wall. I need this deal. I need this gig. I need this thing to close. And how do you behave in those moments? how do you handle yourself and how do you feel afterwards, regardless of the outcome?
Yep.
I've been in a few situations like that. With my real estate career was very short and painful. As an agent, it was 2008, and I'm not one to blame outside forces, but it was really hard to sell and buy houses in 2008. And I had this guy that was just a super bear, and he was like yelling at me, and I was just like, and he wanted his discounted commission, and I was just like, man, I just need this thing to close so that I can pay some rent. Exact same situation, but there comes a point where you're just like, look, man, I'm just not going to have you talk to me like that. That ain't going to happen. I'm fine being broke, but I still got my self-respect. And so,
yes.
And so I'm curious, Alejandro, growing up in Chile, with is it Hungarian name?
Yes. My dad was Hungarian. Yes.
Okay. So your dad is Hungarian. You grew up in Chile. And you mentioned that you've lived through a communist takeover.
Yes.
And hyperinflation, which is something that's happening or has been happening in the United States over the last 12 to 18 months. And you've lived through that already. You've already seen how it affects people and the aftermath of that. Can you give some perspective? Take us back to Chile during all of this kind of turmoil and help us extract some lessons from then about what we may be dealing with now.
Yes, I'm going to tell you that what we're dealing right now is nothing compared to what I've witnessed in Chile. In Chile, I'm talking about a rate of inflation of 20% per month. I'm not talking about everybody getting upset because we're 9 or 10% inflation, 20% a month. And that's not the worst. In the communist regime, we achieve, I believe, like 500% a month, even. That's not even the hyperinflation that people talk about in Germany in the 1920s and the 30s. That was even worse. But this is what happened. What happens is, besides being a mortgage broker, by the way, I have studied the actual science of economics for many years. And this is something that I've come to realize. When you look at a balance, when you look at a balance sheet or a ledger or any kind of accounting, you always see credit and debit. This credit and debit thing is like the two sides of one indivisible coin. You have income and expense, credit and debit, borrower, lender. Those two things are indivisible. You only run into trouble from an individual's perspective or from a country's or society's perspective when you try to divorce them. I'll give you a quick example. You are on your own. You need money. What is the solution? I'm going to go and get a loan. And you get the loan. But when you get the loan, you're not thinking how I'm going to pay it, because in your mind is, I need money, therefore I'm going to go and get it. You're trying to divide, in this case, expense or borrowing from income. And of course, you're going to run into a problem. And this is what happened in Chile. The socialist government in Chile, by the way, and this is not peculiar to Chile. Anywhere that this has happened, and this has happened all over the world, it's never happened in the US yet. That's why people here cannot understand. So even people hearing to this podcast, they may be able to understand my words, but they may not really see in full potential what this means. And I'm not blaming you listening to this if that is the case, because I couldn't, if I hadn't lived it through myself, I couldn't understand that either. But the socialist governments and the hallmark of the communist or the socialist governments is they try to divorce income from expenses, borrowing from lending, credit from debits. So they believe that they can spend without regards to income. And that's what happened in Chile. So when the resources are done, the country or the government starts to just buy things. And this is what happened in Chile. In Chile in the 1970s, we were sort of okay. By 1973, we were so much in ruin that the country could not afford to buy absolutely anything. And this is what happens. Prices start to creep up. My house was right in front of a baker. And I didn't know this, but every morning I ate this delicious bread, that I took for granted. But when the communism and the socialists began, Now you would see a line of people forming up at 6 o'clock in the morning. By 9:30, when somebody in my house wanted to go and buy bread, there was nothing left. There was nothing left because there was rationing. There was rationing because there were not enough materials, there were not enough supplies, there was not enough wheat. There was not enough wheat because the farmers that produced the wheat were so penalized and taxed that they had no incentive to produce anything anymore. And the ones that could produce had no incentive to sell it, because by trying to manipulate the economy from the socialist point of view, meaning now with price controls, the farmer doesn't get any money if he sells his wheat. So he has no, I'm just taking the example of wheat, but just try to imagine this on any sector of the economy and for anything, clothes, food, gas. My dad was lucky because my dad was a business owner. So he had some US dollars. So he went to the black market. Black market is when a group of people join together and decide to trade freely on goods and services. On a socialist or communist government, that is forbidden. You can only go to the store, you can only buy foreign currency according to the exchange rate, and you're not allowed to meet with another individual. This might sound crazy from people listening to this, but this is what happens. You're not allowed to trade freely on a product or a service. So people do it underhandedly. That's why they want to get rid of cash. That's why they want to come in with the digital currency, because with the digital currency, they have total control. The answer from the socialist perspective is always to try to force you to do it on the belief that if everyone was forced to do it this way, then it would work. That is their mentality. But fortunately, in the 1970s...
How many times has that actually proven true, though? I mean, it's almost like we already know how this ends, kind of. So, like, how many times do we have to repeat history before we really learn that lesson?
This is a very interesting fact now that you mentioned that. I'm a history buff, especially on economics. In the last 5,000 years, this has never happened. It has never worked. It has never worked that you can force everyone to do something, quote unquote, for the benefit, quote unquote, of everyone else. That has never worked.
Yep.
So to make a long story short, things start to disappear from the shelves. You have to queue up in the morning just to get a little bit of something that is bad quality. You have to pay 2 or 3 times the cost. But there is not enough for anyone. There is like scarcity. You have a dual phenomenon where everything is expensive and there is not enough for everyone. And that's continues to escalate and escalate and escalate, and people go down the streets, they start to protest, and then whoever is in power has to repress that in some fashion or another. So it just gets worse and worse and worse until eventually the people in power get either killed or they have to run away. That, by the way, has happened always. It always impresses me. Always impresses me. People in college boards, like they call it in schools. How do they call it? The board of they have a name. The people that control the schools. Okay, it always surprises
board of
me.
directors or something.
Yeah, the board of supervisors of the county. The people that, because this is not just at the level of the president. This is at every level. This is at the level of your neighborhood, of your municipality, of your school board, of the county supervisors. This is at the level. This is at any kind of government level that has to do with people. How come nobody has ever cracked a history book, even for half a second, and seen how this ends? It always amazes me. I mean, if you're in a government position, whatever that be, at the local, city, or county level, and you don't care about anyone, you just care about yourself, okay, fine. But how come you don't crack a history book and you know that that's gonna work?
If you just care about yourself, don't you want to preserve your life?
If you just care about yourself and only about your own very skin, how come you don't go, you know what? I got a good run. I got my bags full. It's time to go.
I love how you said it has never worked in 5,000 years. And so there's a lot of precedent for it. And if you really do just care about yourself, yeah, you get a full bag. I think I'm just going to exit out the back.
Yeah. In Mexico, because you and I speak Spanish, I've been in Mexico many times. In Mexico, there was an actual candidate for being governor of small state.
Mhm.
And you know what was his motto? You know what he said on TV?
What was it?
I only steal a little.
That
That was his campaign slogan. I only steal